everyone, Tyler DeLuca back here with some of my takeaways from this past week in women's basketball. I mean, look, last weekend in Los Angeles, I was lucky enough to be at both the Notre Dame USC and South Carolina UCLA games, and these two games set the table for this week to allow us to learn a lot. It was the first in several games of ranked matchups and things of that nature that, like I said, there's just a lot of information to gain from Thanksgiving week. So it's kind of how seasons have been kind of starting to lean towards, where it's like this Thanksgiving week is the first week where we really get to see a lot of these teams get into big time matchups. You know, you'll get a couple here and there sparingly before Thanksgiving, but man, this is the week where it feels like a lot of teams lock in and that strength of schedule goes up. And one team that got to redeem themselves is South Carolina. And being there in person at that South Carolina UCLA game, it was, first off, just wild to see South Carolina lose in that way. And I think due to the new formula that I've discussed of how they plan on being successful this season, where they don't really have that dominant back to the basket big, and they're relying more on their guard play and just having to do it in a different way. And they're certainly talented enough to do it, but it's doing it in a different way. So I think going out of that game, it was reasonable to question, especially when you go against a back to the basket big that is as talented as Lauren Betts, which obviously you're not going to see many of those, but it wouldn't be surprising if you see them again in March. I felt like it was reasonable to have some questions about South Carolina. I also thought, if anyone's earned the benefit of the doubt, it's Dawn Staley. And the bounce back game was against a top 15 team in Iowa State, and the total domination in this game was insane from South Carolina. I forget the exact numbers, but Iowa State scored their first bucket in this game around the 8-minute, I think it was 8:23 in the first quarter. They didn't score their second bucket till around 6 minutes, I think, in the second quarter. That's a 15th ranked team in the nation that South Carolina just defended like that. It's not normal. And that's South Carolina basketball. It's not normal, but that's South Carolina basketball. Like, I was just kind of in shock. And I think that there's a kind of a case to be made that maybe Iowa State was ranked a little bit too high, and maybe however, you know, if you feel like Iowa State was ranked too high, or maybe, you know, it was some of the successes that they saw in March last year and how that kind of carried over into the expectation for this season, reasonably so. It doesn't matter, though. I don't. That is at minimum, that is a good Iowa State team that they held to 36 points on the game and just dominated. Like, there's no other way. Like, this was one of the most pure, dominant games I've witnessed. And this was the bounce back. And I just think Iowa State was in the wrong place at the wrong time, because South Carolina was locked in from the jump, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like, it really was. Like, just, and any question, I think against some of these top tier teams, I think there's still reason to question, you know, the formula, and just not in the sense of like that it can't work, but just as it develops and as it learns how to kind of, I guess, function in this way for a South Carolina program, I still think it's perfectly fine to have questions or doubts, however you want to word it. But ultimately, South Carolina's just going to be just fine. They're going to be just fine. I think, like, and I said this before, I think that this is a more volatile and a strategy with more variance. Like, any team that tries to operate more from the perimeter than in the post. But ultimately, this is a ridiculous win. Coming off a loss like that, I don't know if there's any team in the nation, genuinely speaking, I don't know if any team in the nation was going to stop this version of South Carolina coming off a loss like this. Iowa State was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And it's going to be interesting to see how Iowa State goes from here. Because this is a game, like, realistically, you know, I think it showed Audi Crooks is obviously just a sophomore, and there's still so much time to grow and everything. But I think this showed a lot of the growth aspects that need to be had with Audi. And because going into this game, this has kind of felt like another one where it's like, okay, this is a really good big. Like, how is South Carolina going to handle this? And they handled it so much better. And not that they even did bad on Lauren Betts at the UCLA game, because I thought they defended her really well. But the gravity of everyone else around Lauren Betts, like the attention that was put on Betts just allowed everyone else to be open and operate. But South Carolina's going to be just fine, y'all. I mean, ridiculous defense. Like, I was just like in shock, just waiting for that second bucket to go in for Iowa State. They were at 3 points for the longest time. So I'm intrigued by if it becomes more of a defensive thing for South Carolina this season, and not that that's really a new thing for South Carolina, but just if that becomes a bit more of the formula and being more of a defensive team. Regardless, though, there's no fire alarm to pull. There's no emergency alarm to sound. South Carolina's going to be okay. Like, I think it was okay to have some questions, and I still think it is okay to have some questions. But South Carolina's going to be just fine. Another team that got a rank test was UConn this week against Ole Miss. That third quarter against Ole Miss, because Ole Miss could not get a bucket in the first half, which is, kind of been the frequent issue with Ole Miss, is that the defense is there, but the offense is not. But that third quarter, they came all the way back. They were down, I think it was 22, and they came all the way back. And then AZ Flood came. And this is the game that I have been waiting for. And not that AZ Flood's been back long, but there's been a lot of mock drafts and whatnot early on where it was, had AZ in the lottery and everything. And it's not that I didn't think that AZ can't be a lottery-type talent. I just needed to see it again. And obviously, there's been some major injuries that she's had. But my goodness, if this third quarter is any indication, that was the best quarter of basketball I think I've seen AZ Flood play. And it's not just because, the amount that she scored or anything, but it was just the fact that Ole Miss was punching and was going on a run. It was at least a 10-0 run, just kind of out of nowhere. And AZ Flood was the first one to punch back. Yes, Paige Beckers had a dominant game in her own right, but when it came to that run in that third quarter, AZ was the one that said, hold on a minute, and got the offense back rolling for UConn. And that kind of dog factor to it has been something I've been waiting to see from AZ. And that's not something I had seen before from AZ. Like I said, obviously the talent's been there. It's not hard to find that. But seeing that and her being the one to stop the run in the way that she did and getting buckets in various places, and because we've seen her put up high numbers before, a lot of it being from three. She only attempted 3 threes. She only made one of them. This was a variance of buckets that she was getting. And to be the one to stop the Ole Miss run like that, if that's what they're getting from AZ this year, I assume that she'll be back in the starting lineup sooner rather than later, If that's what they're getting from AZ, good Lord. Because that looked like a level up version. And then obviously Sarah Strong, the freshman, has been increasingly, the 3-point shot I think is going to start falling. I feel confident in it. 0-5 in this game, 5-12 overall. That's a legit freshman right there, y'all. And then obviously Paige Beckers is Paige Beckers. 29 points, 11 to 17. That's what Paige does. And that big three is as solid as it comes if Sarah Strong can continue to develop and be on this trajectory, because she's already at a very solid place right now. That is a very, very solid third best player on your team. But more so, if AZ can be that third quarter version, if that's what we're getting from her, that's a ridiculous team. It's not like UConn is as unfamiliar with having talent like this. But that third quarter from Fudd made me sit up in my seat. My eyebrows are raised. My eye emojis are on Fudd. That was a lottery pick talent. That was a lottery pick game. So like I said, it was never about the talent of Fudd. It was about the availability and seeing it in that way. And I'm back. I'm here. And she showed it immediately. Only been back for a week or so. And this game against a ranked opponent, when UConn needed her, they needed to punch back. It was not desperate times, but it was getting a little shaky. And Fudd was the one to do so. And I was incredibly impressed by that. And another team that got their first ranked win this week, the LSU Tigers. LSU is very intriguing to me because I think that there are some definitive holes in their team, or maybe not holes. Holes might be a bit too dramatic. You could feel where Angel Reese has missed at times, especially on the defensive end. And Flau'jae Johnson and Anissa Morrow have been the big names for this team now. Michaela Williams struggled in the game against Washington where they barely pulled it out, and I'm like, okay, what is this going to look like, right? But this week for LSU, they beat NC State, which I think NC State is a completely different conversation about where their trajectory this season. But for this game in particular, Michaela Williams has the bounce back and drops a team high 24. The backup guards for LSU looked really, really good as well. Anissa Morrow, 20 and 15. We saw Samaya Smith, who's working her way back. And I think that the duo of Morrow and Smith, because last year when Smith went down, that was such an underrated loss for LSU. Smith is legit. And the duos that they have with Smith and Morrow down low and Flau'jae and Michaela Williams on the perimeter is not something to scoff at by any means. And I was really excited to see this weekend, you kind of see both of the duos kind of doing their own thing at different times. And in this game against NC State, Samaya Smith didn't fill out the stat sheet, but she that's not really what I'm expecting from her. She certainly can, but that's not really like what I am anticipating for her to really be doing. But Anissa Morrow, Michaela Williams, Flau'jae Johnson, all 16 plus points in this game against NC State. You get great contributions from Gilbert off the bench. Like, this LSU team is intriguing to me. I think there's still stuff to figure out that Angel Reese certainly aided in helping, especially on the defense side of the ball, like I said. But this LSU team, it feels a little bit more well-rounded where any of the three between Morrow, Michaela Williams, and Flau'jae Johnson can be the one any night. And I especially in some of these games, like where Flau'jae was in foul trouble with something. So she only plays 25 minutes in this game, and they still win 82-65. That's a comfortable win. So being able to find different ways, whether it be a backup guard popping off like Gilbert was, I thought she was great. Whether it be Michaela Williams bouncing back from the 0-point game and dropping 24. Like, sometimes maybe it is Samaya Smith and Anissa Morrow both getting double-doubles like we saw against Washington. Them being able to find different ways to win. And certainly we're going to learn a lot about this team in SEC play and figure out exactly how good they are. But I'm loving a lot of what I'm seeing from LSU so far this season. And I think they might be the team that I feel like I learned the most about this week. Because now we finally got to see them against a ranked opponent. We got to see them against a Power 4 opponent. I am liking what I'm seeing. Like I said, there's still plenty of time. Conference play will bring a lot to light with so many of these teams. But I'm liking a lot of what I'm seeing from LSU so far. But let me know from this week, there's so many matchups across the board. What team did you learn the most from this week? And what is your biggest takeaway? Let me know down in the comments, and I'll see you next time.